This is Making Waves, where we showcase student and graduate reporting from Troy University's Hull School of Journalism and Troy Public Radio. I'm your host, Jamison Spees. For this episode, I sat down with someone you may be familiar with from the work he did on radio and our podcasts. He's also a recent Troy alumni and Troy Public Radio producer. I'm talking about Jack Anderson. Jack came to Troy in 2020 to join the track and field team as a decathlon athlete, but he did much more than that. During his time here, he received a bachelor's and master's degree in journalism and graduated earlier this summer. While at Troy, he also filed stories for NPR, including some from the annual Selma Bridge crossing. And he's the only Troy Public Radio producer we know of to host an interview on Dark Matter. Oh, and on top of all of that, he also sings in a rock band, Speakeasy, which is now based in Nashville, Tennessee. Can you talk a little bit about what you did here at Troy Public Radio?
I came in as an intern initially, and I was really surprised very quickly at how much I felt at home. Just on the opposite end of doing interviews, like being able to ask questions and learn about people, I got a real big joy out of researching, beforehand, so that I would be able to ask them questions that were fairly specific about stuff that maybe other people didn't, or that other people didn't know. I got a real big kick out of that. And so that led me to sign on with a workshop that summer, and I worked there for about a year, including the internship. I did that for a year and a half, and I got to start a podcast called Mad Melodies. And I got to do a lot of very cool things, like interview one of my teammates who made it to the Olympic trials. I got to go see Vice President Harris speak in Selma last year, and I got to go cover it again this year. And that was very cool. It was my first national news spot on NPR, so that was very cool. So a lot of weird stories, a lot of very cool things over that year and a half. I'm very surprised at how much experience I got out in such a short period of time.
Do you have a favorite story that you did for Troy Public Radio?
Oh, dude, 100%. So it's actually the first time I went to Selma. I was very nervous. Like I said, I was very nervous because it was my first time doing anything. I had full on press passes, and I was with journalists who had been doing it for 10, 15 years at that point. Very seasoned, very experienced, very talented journalists. And I was making my way through the crowd, and the Bridge March had started, and I had learned a lot about it throughout the week because I researched it. And one of the things that blew my mind is that I didn't really learn a lot about that in school. And after I thought maybe I had, skipped out on that lesson, but after talking to some of my peers, they were able to give the same answer, that we didn't really learn about a lot of that stuff in depth. And I learned about the foot soldiers, who were the original marchers and stuff. And there's a guy who I saw walking, and I wish I would have been a photographer, because I would have loved to have grabbed this picture, because the march is happening towards me, and I see him walking against the march, and he has both of his hands behind his back. He had foot soldier written across the back of it was painted. It was a boot and a flag, and it just said foot soldier on the back of this jean jacket he had. He was walking by himself through the crowds, and he was just looking. And so I ran over and I said, "Hey man, my name's Jack Anderson. I'm with Troy Public Radio and NPR. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course." And what was going to be a focus on the Bridge Marching Jubilee of that year ended up being a piece that had a story of its own that was about Charles Malden, which is who that was. And I got to talk about his experience. And I just really loved the vision that I had for it and the excitement I got. It was probably one of the first stories that I got really excited to edit and go into the station and record, and it was probably one of the first ones I had a vision for. And so I was very pleased when that vision came to fruition, with all the audio that I'd gathered and audio that I found and the research that I'd done. It was definitely a story that when it came out, I was like, this is exactly how I envisioned it. I'm so glad that I was able to not only produce this story, but produce Charles's story in an accurate way that I felt respected him and the journey.
I'm Joey Hudson, and you're listening to Troy Public Radio, a listener-supported service of Troy University. Vice President Kamala Harris was in Selma to mark the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the day in which peaceful protesters marching for the right to vote were brutally beaten by state troopers.
They marched peacefully. They knew violence against them was inevitable. They knew they would be surrounded by troopers with nightsticks.
This year is the first time Troy Public Radio's Jack Anderson attended the reenactment, and he met and interviewed a participant of the original march.
On March 7th, 1965, approximately 600 civil rights activists, mostly African American, took part in a nonviolent march to peacefully demand that the state of Alabama allow them to exercise their right to vote. This past Sunday, while weaving in and out of the crowd, trying to gather interviews with my mic, I saw a man with a jean jacket on that said Foot Soldier, which meant he was an original member of the march. As it happened, he was the sixth person in line behind the march's leader.
I was close enough to John Lewis to hear he was hit over the head with a billy club right in front of us before they tear gassed us and began to basically beat us back across the Edmund Pettus Bridge all the way back to Brown Chapel Church.
Charles Malden speaks of the events of that day almost as if he was there again. As they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named for a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan who was also a state senator, Malden says they were met by state troopers and local law enforcement officers. They had been told to brutally attack the marchers with clubs and tear gas. I'll admit, I got goosebumps listening to Malden describe the brutal treatment he and the other marchers received at the hands of these officers. I learned about the march in school, but didn't know the depth of the violence that had happened.
America was not a democracy in 1965. It was only a democracy for white people. We were not allowed the right to vote. We couldn't be on juries. We were treated like second-class citizens.
Their actions on that fateful day gathered support for the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which removed barriers for all African Americans. Malden's parents were the first to reap the benefits of what he had sown.
My mother and father were the first people, Artis and Thomas Malden, were the first and second people to register in Dallas County as a result of the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
Looking back, Malden can see the impact of what the march accomplished. That includes a newly drawn congressional district, which may mean that Alabama could send 2 black members of the U.S. House of Representatives to Washington next January.
If Selma, Alabama is a seat of the Voting Rights Act, then like my mother was the first person to help to actuate that. And all because I got my butt beat on the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
It's an election year again, and Malden hopes that current and future generations follow through on what the original marchers were fighting for and go vote. For Troy Public Radio, I'm Jack Anderson.
Do you have a story that you think is the most impactful one that you've done?
The first one that comes to mind that I was really excited to do was when Cole Stewart made it to the U.S. Olympic trials out in Oregon. He's a javelin thrower for Troy University. It was his 5th year, and he's from Auburn, Alabama. When I came on my visit, I had kind of seen him, and he was a year older than me. And I knew his now wife. She actually, like, the first time I came to Troy, she recognized me as like my older brother's little brother. And I was like, God, I can't get away from that. But I knew them pretty well. And so I came here, and I think it was the middle of my freshman year. The beginning toward the middle of my freshman year, she got pregnant. And that was a very, it was good. They were very happy to have, a child and stuff. And for him to become a dad, I'm sure was a dream come true. And he's a great one, 100%. But he then suffered an elbow injury, even had surgery. Just a lot of things stacked against him in the sense of he had a lot on his plate. And I always admired how he was able to persevere through that. And he ended up winning conference his 5th year with a 2-year-old and finishing his degree and went to the Olympic trials. It was just something that I found very inspirational because I thought it was a very good exercise of a story where it's like, look at this dude who's done this incredible thing. But not only is the incredible thing athletically, it's as a dad, as so young and just being so successful. I think that was something that I was really happy to convey. And I think that probably had the biggest impact. I know he said that he really appreciated the way that I presented his story because he felt like it was very accurate, which is something that I always pride myself on, is that I didn't want to create a story that the person didn't feel was up to par or anything like that.
It's the Talk of Troy Conversations, where we take an extended listen to interviews from the Talk of Troy. I'm Joey Hudson. Troy University's track and field program recently competed in the Olympic trials. Senior javelin thrower and Alabama native Cole Stewart traveled to Eugene, Oregon to compete against athletes from across the country for a spot at representing the U.S. in the 2024 Olympic Games. Troy Public Radio's Jack Anderson sat down with Stewart to discuss his road to the Olympics as an athlete, as a Trojan, and as a dad.
Can you share a bit of your athletic background before getting to Troy?
Yeah, so 160-foot guy on my best day. And had a buddy who actually, he had made it to the New Balance Nationals the year before. At the state meet, I actually ended up throwing 182 feet and 2 inches, and 182 feet even was the qualification standard for going to New Balance. And so right after New Balance, we came down and just fell in love. I think I signed about a week and a half before school started, got on my transcript and got my schedule, and that was it.
How could you define your growth since getting here as like an 18-year-old?
Definitely have grown up a lot. And coming into a college setting, I think a lot of kids are not ready for that. I surely wasn't. I competed at the national level once. When you get to a college setting, it's immediately that every week. That first year, I got cut short because of COVID, ended up having an elbow surgery, and ended up having my son. That definitely forced me to mature a lot.
Although many parents credit their kids as the root of all their stress, for Cole, well, it's quite the opposite.
Everything that happened after him was because of him. I mean, I've had some terrible meets. Wow, I've had some terrible meets. And never have I come home and not been met with a smiling face and a big hug.
Is when 70?
Yep.
Yeah. And then after that, it was just straight,
Yep.
Up and up. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that was?
Yeah, so that was all 3 years to get to that Troy meet. And man, it was just like, it was perfect. Threw over 70 for the first time. It was just like a weight lifted off my shoulders, especially leading up to conference, which has always been my end goal. I love the conference meet. I love being there with all the guys and, competing as truly as a team. And that was the goal, was to try to get a big one at conference. So I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Obviously, I know we're talking about it in such a casual manner, but getting to those trials, that's an insane dream for almost any athlete that's come through and even tried track. How was that experience, getting to go?
Oh, it was incredible. I would say it was a goal that I started thinking of watching the 2021 trials. We really started getting serious about it at the beginning of this year. I remember Coach Michelle pulled me aside and she was like, hey, this is something that we can do. Her putting that belief in me, I was like, man, like she's right. Like, we can do this. The goal was to win the conference. And that was kind of one of those, kill two birds with one stone. And so even though I had sort of taken my third round throw and kind of had the conference win secured, it was something that brought a ton of adrenaline on the backside of that competition to say, hey, let's put a big throw out there and give ourselves a chance at that, because it was a goal that we had at the beginning of the year. But as far as the experience getting to go, the week leading up to it, watching all the entries come in and, staying up there in the top 20 was, something I'll never forget.
Troy University's Cole Stewart just missed the qualifying mark to represent the U.S., but we're sure that when he returned, he was met with a smiling face and a big hug. You've been listening to the Talk of Troy. Our producer for this episode is Jack Anderson. You can listen to the podcast at NPR One or wherever you get your podcasts. Tell a friend.
Do you have a funniest story or a randomest story or a radio side quest that you always look back and kind of laugh about?
Oh, dude, I definitely do. He was like, hey, man, are you cool with going and attending this lecture on dark matter? Dr. Adhikari, one of the theorists at Troy, and I had recorded all of his lecture, which was very interesting and it was very fun. It was a weird side quest to get that much into theoretical physics as a journalist, because I had to learn so much. But it ended up paying off in the end, because I had to call him to do another interview and he was super open to it. But this time I had known more about what I was talking about, I guess. And so he and I were able to have a good conversation, and we ended up talking maybe for an hour 15 and finished the interview in 10 minutes, because it was just a couple of questions that I needed for the story. But I think that was the funniest, because at least for a week, all I did was talk about physics, talk about him, about he worked on some supercomputers in Kansas, theorizing black holes. And so we talked a lot about that. And it was just a whole lot of stuff that felt super STEMmy for somebody who's I'm just a writer at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
We don't know what dark matter is. And if you pay very close attention the next hour, you won't know what dark matter is either. Okay, so if you can't see dark matter, how do you know it exists? Well, assistant physics professor Rakshak Adhikari has the answer. Dark matter is something that appears to have mass, and it has the same kind of effects that ordinary matter would have, but unlike regular matter, it doesn't interact with light. It cannot really be seen through ordinary means. So we have an idea of how dark matter behaves, but how do we know where it is? We assume dark matter to have certain properties, and we take those properties, put them in a computer, and simulate a really early universe, and let the supercomputers evolve the dark matter model into current universe. And whatever the simulation gives, you compare it with what you see in the sky. And for the two to match up, Adhikari says that there is likely at least 5 times as much dark matter as there is visible matter in the universe. Adhikari hopes this lecture will help to spark more conversations about our universe. When I was a student here, there used to be a lot of public events, but never had any science-related events at the library. So I thought it might be another way for the center to communicate to students at the university who might not be science majors, but may still be interested in science. And the Center for Relativity and Cosmology is already planning 2 more science lectures in the spring semester. For the Talk of Troy, I'm Jack Anderson.
And now, sort of transitioning to music, can you talk a little bit about what Speakeasy is and what y'all are doing and your current plans for the future?
Speakeasy is a band that started at Troy University officially about a year and a half ago. We decided, hey, I think we could write our own original music, and with that, we needed an original name. It's been really, really cool to really explore this new avenue of music that I haven't been in before, which is, primarily before being a cover artist. I get to play those songs, but they're not mine, and I don't feel as connected with them. So this past April, we released our debut EP, Hearsay, and just as a test run to be like, should we make music? Should we do this? We were honestly quite close to giving up, in the sense of being like, yeah, I mean, I was finishing up my degree. I'll get a job somewhere. But we played a music festival up in Auburn. It was a Saturday, and Friday we had went to record the EP in Montgomery. So we recorded it all in one day over a 4 or 5 hour session. And then we headed to Auburn to play this music festival. And one of the things we said is we're like, guys, we just recorded an EP and y'all are going to be the first to hear our original music. And so we got like really good response from that. We're like, oh, this is cool, whatever. And then we played another show about a week later up in Auburn again, but this was at a different venue. And there were some people there, and it was a pretty good crowd, and we were pretty hype about that. And we were introducing the last song of the EP, which is Time Will Pass, and that's something that when we play it live, we play it differently every time because that was a last-second addition to the EP, and we really kind of use it as a conduit to let the guys jam and have fun and give them a blank canvas, just to end the show off. And sometimes it works out better than others, but I think it's always the passion is felt, and we were introducing that song. And Nate started playing the rhythm, and there's this group of people over to the side. I won't forget this, man. It was really, really cool because they all like started cheering, and I was like, oh, whatever. And I was like, so this is our last song of the night, and this one is called, and they all yelled Time Will Pass, and I was like, no way. And they sang every lyric to that, and I always kept that very close because it was like, wow, they actually like our music and are listening. I think maybe 2 weeks after that, we're like, hey guys, I think we should spend the summer trying to see if other people like our music. So we played like every weekend in a new city, in a new place, new venue, made so many connections, was so happy with all the friends that we had made. And we got some pretty positive response. And then we decided to take the ultimate test, which is like, let's go up to Nashville and see if we're any good. Once again, got very strong response. So we decided to take that leap, and we're moving up to Nashville to chase music.
Well, that's really cool. What do you think the connection is between working in radio and writing music?
Being a writer is something that is very human, and I think it's something very beautiful. I held on to a quote for the longest time because I would just write all the time. Like I would always just write whatever little song I could or whatever little poem or little short stories, or I was really into like fantasy things like Magic the Gathering. I still am, but like I would make stories up with those cards and stuff like that. I was always very inspired to put my thoughts on paper and share it to somebody. And there was a quote that I heard one time that was like, if you're ever asking if you're a writer, you're not. It's something that you can't help, you just have to do. And I think it's a craft that always is very hard, but very rewarding to hone in any aspect. Because even, in print and and radio and television, the stories and the relaying of information are all written very differently. They may have similar characteristics, but they're always presented differently, because you have certain obstructions. So I think being able to learn to write in different environments has helped me to write in my own and create my own.
Perfect. Well, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like our listeners to walk away with from the interview?
I'm really happy to be able to come back and like do interviews like this and help Troy Public Radio out all the time, because they helped me so much. So like anytime I get a phone call from them, I'm pretty excited, and I hope that y'all continue to do the good work and that your listeners realize that, because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes and so much that they have to put up with. It's really cool whenever I'm able to help y'all out, because I do really love that station.
Great. Well, I really appreciate that. Jack Anderson, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you. You have a good one.
That was Troy University broadcast journalism graduate Jack Anderson. If you'd like to hear recordings of Jack's radio work, you can find him on SoundCloud and search for Troy Public Radio, Jack Anderson. If you'd like to hear more about his band, they are on all music streaming platforms as Speakeasy. 2 words, Speak Easy. I'm Jamison Spees, inviting you to join us for the next big splash on Making Waves. Be sure to tell your friends about the show and leave us a review. Thank you.